Hello and welcome. More than 150 years later, the Civil War still echoes through these places. Today, we compare 50 Civil War photos then and now. Please check out all the original sources in the description. Private D.W.G. Arnold of the 22nd New York Militia posed outside a lodge in Harper's Ferry in 1862. The building still stands, although it has been altered over the years. Ulysses S. Grant and George G. Meade met near Massaponax Church in Virginia during the 1864 campaign. The church still stands, surrounded by a landscape that has changed little. U.S. Army troops camped near Fort Casino outside Nashville, Tennessee in December 1864 after the surrounding woods were cleared. The former battlefield has since been replaced by homes and city streets. Union troops crossed the James River on a pontoon bridge here in July 1864 before the First Battle of Deep Bottom. The crossing has vanished, leaving behind a quiet stretch of river. Charleston Zouave cadets posed at Castle Pinckney in Charleston Harbor during the Civil War. The old fort still sits on its island, though it has remained unused for many years. Confederate troops marched along North Market Street in Frederick, Maryland, on their way to Antietam in 1862. The street remains lined with many of the same historic buildings. Basil Biggs returned to Gettysburg after the battle and helped rebury Union soldiers for the new National Cemetery. His former property is remembered as part of the town's Civil War story. Fort Carroll helped defend Washington, D.C. during the Civil War by protecting the Potomac River approaches. Modern buildings and roads are occupying the fort's place today. Union soldiers gathered outside Price, Birch and Company, a former slave trading firm in Alexandria, Virginia. The building still stands, now marked by a plaque explaining its history. Richmond lay in ruins after Confederate forces evacuated the city in 1865, leaving burned buildings and scattered cannons behind. The same streets are now lined with modern buildings. Whitehall Street in Atlanta was once home to slave auctions and busy commerce during the Civil War. Renamed Peachtree Street, it is now part of the city's modern downtown. Redoubt No. 5 formed part of Nashville's powerful Union defenses during the battle in December 1864. The earthworks remain, though the surrounding landscape has changed dramatically. Antietam's Lutheran Church stood damaged after heavy fighting reached Main Street in September 1862. The original church is gone, and a cemetery now stands in its place. The Farley Plantation near Brandy Station served as General John Sedgwick's headquarters during the winter of 1863. The mansion still stands, although it remains privately owned. Fresh graves surrounded Burnside Bridge after the Battle of Antietam in September 1862. The bridge still crosses Antietam Creek, welcoming visitors instead of marching soldiers. Federal cavalry passed Children near Sudley Springs Ford in Virginia during the spring of 1862. The crossing remains peaceful today, despite the fierce fighting that soon followed nearby. Union soldiers crossed Burnside Bridge during the Battle of Antietam in September 1862 after hours of fierce fighting. The stone bridge still spans Antietam Creek, much as it did then. Middle Bridge carried Union troops toward Antietam in September 1862, near Sharpsburg, Maryland. The original bridge was destroyed by flooding in 1889 and no longer survives. General Ulysses S. Grant posed with his staff on Lookout Mountain after the 1863 campaign near Chattanooga. Visitors can still stand at nearly the same overlook today. Union breastworks covered Culp's Hill during the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. The hill is still wooded, and parts of the original defenses can still be seen today. Union soldiers stood beside freshly dug graves after the Battle of Cedar Mountain in August 1862. The battlefield remains open, with Cedar Mountain still rising beyond the fields. Appomattox Courthouse became part of history when Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant in April 1865. The village has been restored, preserving the scene of the war's final chapter. Union soldiers built stone defenses across Little Round Top using the hill's natural boulders in 1863. Many of those rocks and breastworks can still be seen along the hillside. Allatoona Pass in Georgia was fiercely contested during the Civil War, with railroad tracks running through the narrow mountain gap. The tracks are gone, but the old earthworks still remain among the trees. Union troops occupied trenches along Virginia's North Anna River during the 1864 campaign. The earthworks can still be traced through the quiet woods beside the river. Lee and Gordon's Mill in Chickamauga, Georgia, stood beside the battlefield during the 1863 campaign. After burning in 1867, the mill was rebuilt and now welcomes visitors with a museum. Matthew Brady photographed this Gettysburg field 2 weeks after the battle, looking toward Herbst Woods. The pond has filled with reeds, but much of the surrounding landscape remains familiar. Confederate prisoners were photographed on Seminary Ridge after the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. The stone wall and rolling ridge remain much as they appeared after the fighting. The Battle of Gettysburg raged across these fields from July 1st to 3rd, 1863, changing the course of the Civil War. The battlefield now welcomes visitors from around the world. Evergreen Cemetery overlooked the Battle of Gettysburg after opening only a decade earlier. A replica cannon now marks the historic viewpoint above the town and battlefield. The Otho J. Smith Farm near Antietam served as a Union field hospital after the battle in September 1862. The fields remain much the same, though the hospital itself is long gone. The Matthews House on Matthews Hill overlooked fierce fighting during the First Battle of Bull Run in 1861. Trees now cover much of the view, though the battlefield can still be recognized. Union troops camped at Cumberland Landing on Virginia's Pamunkey River during the Peninsula Campaign in May 1862. The riverbank is now quiet, with little remaining of the vast encampment. Stonewall Jackson was mortally wounded by friendly fire at Chancellorsville on May 2, 1863. A modern paved road now passes through the wooded site where the incident happened. The Sheeds House sheltered Union soldiers after their lines collapsed on the first day at Gettysburg. The historic home still stands beside Chambersburg Pike, overlooking the battlefield. Children played in the streets of Richmond after Union forces captured the Confederate capital in 1865. This particular house still stands, looking almost the same. Soldiers of the 7th Illinois Infantry posed at Point Lookout after the Battle of Lookout Mountain in 1863. The overlook still offers the same sweeping view across the valley. Bodies covered the ground around Antietam's Dunker Church after the battle in September 1862. The church was rebuilt in 1962 after a storm destroyed the original building decades earlier. Richmond's burnt district was left blackened by fires during the city's evacuation in 1865. Modern buildings now fill the area, leaving little trace of the wartime destruction. The Trossel Farm at Gettysburg became General Dan Sickles's headquarters during the battle in 1863. The barn still bears the famous artillery shell hole, visible in wartime photographs. The stone house at Bull Run in Manassas, Virginia, served as a field hospital after the first major battle of the war. The historic building still stands beside the busy modern highway. Veterans gathered in Nashville in 1927 to dedicate a monument honoring the Union victory of December 1864. The monument still stands, although it's a bit overgrown. The Miller farmhouse stood in the middle of fierce fighting during the Battle of Antietam in 1862. Against the odds, the house survived and still stands beside the battlefield. The Ray House at Wilson's Creek survived the battle fought there in August 1861. It remains the only original home on the battlefield and is carefully maintained for visitors. A fallen Confederate soldier lay in Gettysburg's slaughter pen near Devil's Den after the battle in 1863. A visitor parking lot now sits only a short walk from the same spot. A Confederate soldier was photographed where he fell on the western side of Devil's Den after Gettysburg. His body was later moved nearby for one of the war's most famous photographs. This Gettysburg battlefield view captured the aftermath of the fighting in 1863, just days after the battle ended. The landscape remains remarkably familiar, more than 150 years later. Atlanta's railroad terminus was filled with Union wagons and railroad supplies after the city fell in 1864. The depot is gone, and the site is now a parking lot surrounded by modern buildings. East High Street in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, looked very different during the Civil War years, with horse-drawn traffic filling the road. Modern buildings and vehicles now define the same street. This home became Robert E. Lee's residence during and shortly after the Civil War. The historic house still stands, offering a glimpse into one of the Confederacy's most famous figures. Devil's Den at Gettysburg was littered with fallen soldiers after the battle in 1863. The rocky landscape remains much the same, now visited by thousands each year. Confederate soldiers lay in Gettysburg's Rose pasture after the fighting on July 2, 1863, awaiting burial. The quiet field remains, though little reveals the tragic events that unfolded here. This Nashville building served as part of Hospital No. 3 during the Civil War. It later became home to the Ernest Tubb Record Shop, before joining Broadway's busy entertainment district.